Hey guys, this is Nick and welcome to my Linux experiment. So, as I keep exploring KDE, I'd like to take a little time to talk about KDE's history and creation, up until the current version KDE 5. Let's start. Why KDE? Well, KDE used to stand for the K desktop environment. Why K? No reason. At some point it stood for Kool, but that meaning has been dropped since. It also looks like CDE, which was a popular desktop environment on Unix systems back in the 90s. These days, KDE is more than just a desktop environment, so it's just KDE. No real meaning behind that. KDE's origins. Started in '96 by Matthias Ettrich, KDE has one goal: unifying Unix's desktop environments, which looked and acted a lot differently back in the day. It was created using the Qt library and the C++ language. Nowadays, Qt is free software, but back then it wasn't, so some developers decided to create their own DE from a free toolkit, and that's how GNOME was born. So in a way, KDE actually led to the creation of GNOME. At the time, Matthias said it was basically a fantasy, but here, a year later, in July of 1998, KDE 1 was released. KDE 1.0. 1.0 was the first real release of KDE. It looked like the Motif library, which was the most used toolkit at the time. It could also be made to look like Windows 95. KDE 1.0 supported Linux and FreeBSD. This first version was little more than an application developing framework and the premises of a few applications with a panel, a task manager and an application launcher, a desktop where you could store some icons, and a file manager called KFM with a few other utilities. KDE 2.0. About 2 years later, KDE 2.0 was released. It was almost completely rewritten and introduced Conqueror, which was a nice concept at the time, file manager and web browser in one application. K-Office, the KDE Office suite, was also part of the release. The CEO of SUSE Linux said at the time that this desktop environment would usher a similar landslide on the desktop Linux market as was already being experienced on the server side of things. It was probably the first year of the Linux desktop quote ever. KDE 2.0 shipped with 14 different themes to show off the theming capabilities of the Qt library, and you could also import GNOME themes as well. A lot of system components also saw their first iteration here, such as KIO, KParts and KHTML, which went on to serve as the basis for WebKit. KDE 3.0. In 2002, KDE 3.0 was released. It was a mature, complete release and it showed. Shipped with Conqueror for web browsing and file management, Kmail for personal email, Koffice, KOrganizer for calendar, as well as Noatune for music playback and Action as a video player. More frameworks were added to help developing applications, as well as KDevelop, a full IDE to develop KDE applications. KDE 3.0 went to receive updates until 6 years later in August of 2008, with KDE 3.5.10, which was as stable as could be and was used by a wide variety of distributions such as SUSE or Kubuntu. I remember fondly a nice tool called Bagheera, which allowed you to skin everything to look like any version of macOS 10, including the brushed metal look, a dock and a global menu bar. It was awesome. KDE 4.0. In January of 2008 was released KDE 4.0. It looked stunning at the time and was in many ways a whole new desktop environment. The panel widget system called Super Caramba and the desktop were fused into one application called Plasma using plasmoids, basically widgets. This concept persists to this day. KDE 4 shipped with Dolphin, a whole new file manager, Conqueror for web browsing, as well as Ocular for PDF viewing, and many more applications. The theme was called Oxygen, and at the time it was one of the most beautiful icon and widget themes I had ever seen. The blue highlights, the scroll bars, the icons, everything looked incredibly polished next to the potato brown look of my GNOME Ubuntu desktop at the time. I still think it's one of the best looking desktops to this day. KDE 4.0 was not that well received at the time, if memory serves, since it was far from being as stable and full-featured as KDE 3.5 with frequent plasma crashes. The subsequent versions, ranging from 4.1 in July 2008 to 4.14 in August 2014, improved the desktop greatly and made it truly shine. KDE 5.0. In 2014, KDE divided its core components into 3 blocks: the Plasma desktop, the KDE applications, which are the complete suite of KDE-compatible programs, and the KDE framework, which are the libraries and components to integrate all this system into a coherent whole. Plasma 5.0 was released in July of 2014, bringing a whole new look called Breeze, which is still the default these days. Plasma now used OpenGL for animations and rendering, using the GPU for what it's good at and leaving the CPU for compute-intensive tasks. The kickoff menu had been redesigned, and Plasma now supported high DPI displays. Plasma 5 lacked some of Plasma 4 features, which returned in subsequent updates. KDE kept advancing up until today, with Plasma version 5.13 being the currently released version. Nowadays, KDE is a very featureful and nice-looking desktop environment, especially Plasma, and it's still shipped by plenty of distributions, even though its star has waned a little bit since the KDE 3.5 days, where it was basically ubiquitous. To conclude, I'll say I'll still have very fond memories of KDE 3.5 with my obsession to make it look as much as macOS 10 as possible, and of KDE 4.0, of which I used to compile betas on my crappy laptop only to watch them crash and burn at startup. That minor glimpse of the oxygen icon theme was enough to make me want to start over again and again. I still enjoy KDE today, and rediscovering it is pretty fun. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye! If you enjoyed, please consider liking, subscribing, and turning on notifications. You can also follow me on Twitter at TheLinuxEXP. Thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.